Kate Mila Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. It's time for our Saturday book, and in honor of March being Women's History Month, we're doing The Horn, plural, Horns of the Goddess by Dolores Cannon. Great favorite. Everybody seems to really enjoy her books. This is a good one. Now, this book was written in 2022. Dolores died in 2014. She did not come back and write it from the grave, no. As most people who follow her books here, because we've done a lot of them, already know, her daughter has taken Dolores' unfinished work. Dolores had a lot of books cooking all at the same time because what she did, as most of you know, she collated regressive hypnotherapy sessions across the decades, and she would sit on a topic until she felt she had enough for a book about that topic or related. And this book started out a long time ago, and it's a collation of a whole lot of sessions, and her daughter put it together for her. Dolores started her own publishing company called Ozark Mountain Publishing Company. Oh, it should be on this book. Ozark Mountain Publishing. Smart, because it would require some single company to deal with all her books. She's such a prolific writer. So in honor of Women's History Month, we're doing this book, and at some point here in the next week and a half, I'm making no promises, I have a conversation with Denise Siegel, and we discuss at great length religion and women. The idea was to discuss the divine feminine, but you know how it goes when Denise and I start talking. So we went off in a myriad of different directions, but all related to the idea of goddess religions and the divine feminine. It was really fun. So I think that's it. I'm trying to think if I had any other news. Be sure and check out the other conversations I've done recently. The Lindbergh baby channeling, that was a little bit of a mind blower. Oh, I do have a little bit to say about that. I've gotten some information about some new research that's brought this whole thing up again. I had no idea. I think that's so interesting, that this story presents itself, and it's on the heels, apparently, of people resurrecting the case, based on the theory that actually Charles Lindbergh was culpable. I disagree with that. I noticed that what little I looked a little bit up the books or the topic, people talking about this theory. And they're basing a lot of their ideas about the case on evidence that was presented at trial. But the evidence that was presented at trial, as we now know, was largely manipulated. And you can't use anything that happened in that trial. That was a show trial, allegedly. And were you to investigate this case, which would be very difficult because it was obstructed all along the way, you would really have to start at the beginning. And you'd have a great deal of difficulty because people are still obstructing it, as we found out with William Norris's book. So I would say it's an interesting theory. I think that there is indeed some guilt on the part of people who never suffered the repercussions. I do believe that an innocent man was executed. I 100% believe that based on the facts as I understand them now. And it seems pretty persuasive that whatever happened, it wasn't the guy they executed for it. So I just thought I'd let you guys know that I am aware that I just discovered yesterday that there's this new theory spinning around, and it's in the zeitgeist, I guess. It's in the ether. Very interesting. So let's get down to The Horns of the Goddess by Dolores Cannon, published in 2022. In the introduction, she discusses that she considers herself to be a time traveler because she travels across the ages through the process of regressive hypnosis. She sees herself, well, speaking in the present tense, but she sees herself as a reporter, researcher, investigator, the accumulator of lost knowledge, and this is in a method that she designed over 30 years ago. And I'm soon going to be having a conversation with somebody who does this kind of hypnotherapy, so stay tuned. In the meantime, in the 1960s, hypnosis, she said, was mostly used for smoking and weight loss, and doing past life regression with hypnosis was absolutely unheard of. In the 70s, it was more, a little bit more well-known, but still very much frowned upon. But it's now evolved, and it's an accepted thing. The value of it, has been proven. The basic premise being issues people might be having, physical, emotional, life choice issues they may be having today in this life, oftentimes, in her experience, are coming from a past life. And once they're made aware of the source of their problem, it often helps to deal with the problem in this life. All kinds of weird things, like having a broken picker, for example, often has to do with your past life. So the only book she said that she was aware of at the beginning of her experience was The Search for Bridie Murphy. And, this is, there's no such thing as coincidence. So if you noticed, I had a conversation with the Bookers about Lucretia Mott, Carolyn Booker being a descendant of Lucretia Mott. How weird is that? Because I met her under different circumstances. And we were having a conversation about Women's History Month, and she mentioned, one of my relatives was a suffragette. So it just goes to show you. Why am I bringing her up right now? Because she and I had a conversation. We recorded a conversation with Peter and Carolyn the other day about Lucretia Mott, and mediumship with Lucretia Mott was very interesting. But we were also discussing, she mentioned that she had met Bridie Murphy. And I completely forgot that Dolores Cannon mentions Bridie Murphy. So here we go. Synchronicity. It's very interesting. So the only book that at the time that Dolores Cannon started was The Search for Bridie Murphy. And this was an Irish woman who claimed to go back, remember many lives. And this caused a lot of controversy at the time. Today, it's like big yawn. We've heard other things. Past life, the idea of it in Western cultures no longer considered delusional or fringe. People may not agree with it necessarily. I'm thinking of, fundamentalists might not agree with it, but pretty much everybody's heard of it. And if you talk about it, they don't automatically go look for the butterfly net. So her first case, Cannon's first case in 1968, was a woman who came in for weight loss. And when she went into trance, she suddenly discovered herself a 1920s flapper. And eventually, Cannon took her through 5 lives. And we are going to do that book. And it is very interesting. In this book, she actually mentioned that that the book would someday be printed about her. So this woman in trance from the 1920s basically told Cannon, yeah, you're going to write a book and it's going to talk about me, and then there'll be a whole book about me. It shows how life can take a 180-degree turn. She went from being a Navy wife with children to a regressive hypnotherapist, and we're going to go into that more in detail in another book. So, something to look forward to. Dessert is coming. Eventually, from being a Navy wife, she became a regressive hypnotherapist, and she really did not get to dig in deep until her children were grown. That's a very familiar story for everybody. So in 1979, so it took 11, 12 years for her to actually start doing it seriously. And she never expected it would result in 19 books. And I think now there are actually more posthumous books were written. She's had many testing times, and different paths or detours were possible. She was tested by fate, and she felt that it was a testing of her commitment to the process, just to see, well, is she going to be serious about this? Until she got to the point where she felt there was no turning back, and there's a quote in the book. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy. The moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issued from the decision raising in one's favor. All manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings, and material assistance, which no one could have dreamed would have come their way. Whatever you do or dream, you can do. Just begin it. Because boldness has genius and power and magic in it. And that's Goethe. So, interesting little quote. She knew she was being guided by unseen forces. It was intuitive feeling she had. She never got more than she could handle in the way of information, and it was titrated so that one of the reasons that these books cross so many decades is because she didn't receive the full, detailed, in-depth explanation for things. Sometimes for a long time, she needed to process it, and they gave it to her in small doses and waited for her to assimilate that understanding and then get it some more until she fully understood, and it took time. She said there was no accident or coincidence to any of the people that she worked with. She herself discovered a shorter method to get people who were really receptive into a somnambulistic state. This is the state that you're kind of in, where you're sort of semi-comatose before and after you go to sleep. You, maybe one is called a hypnagogic state, but don't quote me on that. I'm just digressing. She developed her own technique to get people into this state of mind, and people who were good at getting into a somnambulistic state were good at doing this sort of regressive hypnotherapy. And Cannon found most people could get into it in a normal regression, but when they do, they think they've made the whole thing up and they're a little bit embarrassed. I mean, I'm telling you stories, that kind of thing. Her technique, the somnambulistic, people don't really remember what they've said. It blocks conscious interference, and the person becomes another person, another personality. And in this lifetime, that personality does not really exist. And they won't understand when Cannon is talking to them, when they are in regression. They may not understand things that she says. Like if she talks about a computer or an automobile or electric lights, and she's talking to a personality that ostensibly is from the Middle Ages, they'll have no idea what she's talking about. And often simple little references that we make that I can't even think of one because they're just so basic, and they are anachronistic if they're received in the ears of somebody in Roman Empire or something. So she also discovered that people in a trance state, their handwriting is totally different. And it just simply couldn't be written by the same person. And we'll see this again in another book, she actually had handwriting experts analyze the different handwritings of the different regressive personalities of one woman. And the handwriting experts thought they were totally different people that she was looking at. They often can speak other languages that they don't know in their modern existence right now, and sometimes they are even dead languages that nobody speaks anymore, and it takes experts to figure it out. Oftentimes they feel like they're waking up, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I fell asleep." They have no sense of the passage of time. And she says you can, like I said, you can trace a lot of people's problems in this present life to a past life. She said, the majority of past lives are boring and mundane. I staunchly uphold that I was a scullery maid in 99% of my past lives. I cannot even imagine when people say, oh, I was Cleopatra, or we were Napoleon and Josephine. I mean, come on. There's billions of people have come this way, and almost none of them is rich and famous. But she said that this really solidifies the veracity of things people say to her, because they're not claiming to be rich or famous or important. Their ego is not driving the stories they're telling. And oftentimes she'll discover that people will not be familiar with the world outside their narrow boundaries. So, for example, off the top of my head, if she regresses somebody and that somebody is a scullery maid in a castle in Germany in the 1100s, they won't know about anything outside of that environment. They will not have traveled. Most people, until very recently, never went beyond 15 miles from their home where they were born. So she may get somebody who says, she'll ask, who is the king? And she'll say, the king. I don't know. I hear tell maybe he died. I don't know. They'll know the name of the lord of the manor. Maybe. They'll know vaguely the relationships of some of the nobility, but it's not like today where information is ubiquitous and overwhelming and ridiculous. We all know far too much about everybody's stuff. Most people knew nothing about the world they lived in beyond their front yard. She said they lived small, ordinary lives. And I wrote down, never Napoleon, never Cleopatra. She said, once again, that she gets the information that she gets in bits and pieces, and she puts it together. She gets it often from different people. She would regress somebody in Europe and somebody in Mexico, and they didn't know each other. They'd be separated by that geographic distance and maybe 10 years time from the two regressions, and they'll tell a similar story. It's very interesting. She talked a lot about the Gnostic groups, the ancient societies that had tremendous knowledge and ability. Gnosticism, Gnostic, it comes from the Greek. I believe it means knowledge, knowing, wisdom. I think Sophia is wisdom, and Gnostia, or Gnostic means knowledge. They were secret. And the word that's often used is occult, occulted. And occult does not mean evil. Occult comes from the Latin occurrere, I think. It's been a while. And it means to be hidden. It's hidden from the public view to keep the knowledge preserved and safe from those who would like to destroy the knowledge and anyone who owns the knowledge. Groups that wanted the information for their own use in a negative way too. That was the other fear, that the knowledge would fall into the wrong hands. Not that it would be lost, but it would be used for bad purposes. The Essenes chose death instead of revealing information. Throughout history, societies have not revealed their secrets, and there's a reason that they keep these secrets from the general public. I think we've all heard Denise go off about New Age, the book The Secret, and how upset it makes her that there's such a weak understanding or a misapprehension about the laws of the universe, things like manifestation. And I don't know enough about it to adequately criticize it. I just have a gut feeling that people are getting it wrong, and we all need to know, all of us need to know more about it. And this is one of the reasons why it's kept hidden, because people are not adequate to use it correctly. She said that many of her clients want to retrieve lost and forgotten knowledge. They actually come to her for that. They have the suspicion that there's something inside of them that they can't tap into. She said they come for psychic healing, energy healing, and oftentimes they come from that world themselves. So people, once you go down this road, once you start, well, because you're listening to this book right now, you're on the road. It opens doors to you, and you start to pursue issues you may not have even been aware existed. She said a lot of artists and musicians, for some reason, the arts and creativity open those doors of awareness for people. She says all this information is in each of our minds, all of our minds, in our subconscious. Ancient knowledge is not forgotten. It's just hidden. And it can be accessed if it's appropriate. If you're not ready to hear it, if you're not ready to know it or understand it, you won't. So the very fact that you'd be interested in this book means that we are ready to hear what's in here anyway. And certainly not the full story, but it's a start. So the subconscious is capable of judging what you can and cannot handle, what you will and will not understand. And you'll get what you need when you need it, if you're open to pursuing it. In her hypnotic therapy, she interacts with the subconscious, and then it decides when it's time for the information to come back for people from where it's been stored. And it understands, the subconscious understands what a person's motives are. She says it's a groundswell. It's really happening in large amounts now, and it can improve the world. We can all benefit from this process of, like an evolutionary process of researching and learning. This is a good thing. It's a good thing for each of us as an individual, and it's good for the world. She said many of her clients end up opening healing centers. They use ancient methods from long gone societies and machines from Atlantis. So, yeah, I don't know what those are. She says she's a mediator to help them bring this lost knowledge back. That was one of her big purposes, was to have people approach her and say, I just feel like I want to dig into my depths and see what I can learn about myself. And they go away opening up healing centers, and she helped them to make that possible. She says the following cases in this book will reveal that things like little people, fairies and gnomes and goblins and leprechauns, those are all real. Those are spiritual beings that coexist with us. The ancients knew them because they were closer to nature. We don't see them necessarily. Maybe, I don't know, my mother talked to them. But we know they're there. We know they're there. Children are often more into that. The old religions worked with the earth. We know this, we understand this now. I talk about people listening to this book. I mean, we know that. How much we really comprehend remains to be seen. But I think we're all aware that the earth, Gaia, Mother Earth, is an entity. Magic is real. It's just the use and manipulation of energy, and it seems inexplicable or magic to us because we don't fully understand what we would call the science, the facts of the energetic power that's there. Any problems that happen with magic lie with the motives of the manipulator. So it's not that magic is bad. It's just using energy. It's people's motives can be erroneous, and using energy creates feedback and karma. So you have to be really careful what your motivations are. So you put a little voodoo hex on somebody, you may very well regret that. The ancients knew that, and they knew not to use those kinds of powers in negative ways. But they were persecuted for their knowledge because of ignorance. And the subconscious remembers all of this. It's kind of astounding how many people, when they start digging into their past lives and their understanding of this topic, find out that they were burnt at the stake or put in a dunking chair or persecuted by the Inquisition. Of course, shouldn't be too astounding because it happened to an awful lot of people. Oh, here we go. The Catholic Church tried to wipe these people out. And that's why all of this was done in secret, in fear for their lives and in fear of the knowledge falling in the wrong hands. Let's see, read my handwriting. Section 1. Life as a Druidess. So she saved sessions over the years until she had enough around a theme, a particular theme to publish, enough to create a narrative. And so we're going to hop around in time, not just when people are in trance, but the time period from which these sessions come. In 1982 and 83, she had a client named Karen, seriously, named Karen, and she taught Cannon about time travel because she had so many, went with such ease into her past lives. She explored 30 different lives of hers. This story about this woman is familiar to me, and I think it's been in some of her earlier books. And if I remember correctly, which I might not, but if I remember correctly, she may have been one of the ones who worked with her with Nostradamus, but we'll see. Karen left school without graduating at the age of 17 and joined the army. I think this is that woman. And she became a computer expert in a time when computers were so new that you really couldn't even go to school for them anyway. And after the army, she worked for an Arkansas company. Not having an education was an asset with Cannon because she didn't have enough factual knowledge about things like history and geography to fabricate or to fantasize. She couldn't even make things up because she simply didn't know about stuff. I mean, she was a naive 17-year-old girl when she went into the army, and she went directly into working with computers and had never pursued a lot of the historical global things she ended up talking about. And it's really interesting. Cannon said many of her subjects tell about places and times that are not generally well known anyway. Now, all of this, remember, we have to keep in mind, pre-internet. And it required extensive research on Cannon's part after the sessions to verify and fact check. She didn't publish things that people just made up and it was a tissue of lies. All of this was before the internet. All of this took Cannon ages in libraries, and she really was a great researcher. So her work has recovered information about lost times, lost places, including Gnostic knowledge and forgotten abilities that humans have had. She often worked with a friend and fellow hypnotherapist named Harriet for 20 years. And sometimes Harriet was in these sessions and there was kind of a three-way dialogue, and I glossed over that. I did not, the content didn't suffer. You know, when you read a dialogue of a conversation that people have, we spend a lot of time when we talk not making a lot of sense, sentence fragments, double explaining ourselves. So what I did was I condensed it, just to let you know. If you get the book, you're going to go, wait, what a minute? What? But I promise that the essence, the core of the conversation's definitely still here. So she was working very early with Karen and Cannon, and they, in the early days, assumed that time was linear, and they tried to approach past lives chronologically. So let's go back to your most recent past life, and let's go back to your second most recent past life. And your most recent past life, if you're, I don't know, let's say you're my age today, and you were born in the 50s, so your most recent past life was probably ended around World War II. And then before that, maybe you were alive during the 20s and that kind of thing. And they quickly found out that time, even in regression, was not linear. You couldn't approach it chronologically. So what does that mean? That means your past life, ostensibly, which is covered in another book, you could be living in what would be our future. or in your past life, you could have lived, your most recent past life could have been the Roman Empire. But the second most recent past life was during World War II. You just, depends on what your soul chose to learn the lesson it chose. So it took her 15 years and working on the convoluted universe to get the realization that this just wasn't true, that it was chronological and linear. She found there is no time. Remember Stefan Schwartz talking about that. You can't talk about, I'm sending you healing, because there's no sending about it. There's no such thing as space. And I'm not going back in time. This is not remote viewing of the past, because we're not going back in time, because there's no going back, because it's all happening simultaneously. Very difficult to fully understand, and even when we intellectually think we understand it, contradictory terms come out of my mouth all the time. So you don't send people love because you just feel love for them, and there it is. So, see how it's just ingrained in our language. Time is an illusion, and everything is happening at the same time. And she said when she was doing these first sessions, she didn't understand this herself in the 1980s. It took her exposure to these ideas and then digesting them. And she said she thought when she went into this that she understood reincarnation, and she thought going back 100 years was daring. And then she started doing books like Hiroshima book, and which we did last year, and the Essene book, both of them which we did. And I think I have so many books already I've read, and I have notes, and I'm prepared to present them. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we did the Essene books. I think I might have a book she did about Jesus still to cover. Time has no meaning. I don't know. So when in session with Karen, Karen kept returning to the same pastime and always brought out the same particular entity, personality in that time, and as in all the past sessions with her. So every time she had a session, she'd kind of just regress back to the same personality in the same time period. That's not true of most people. So in this particular session, she was trying to take her back to the 700s, but she wasn't sure because, people were illiterate. There weren't clocks and calendars and stuff, so it's difficult to know. So Karen said, okay, in trance, said, okay, I'm on the Isle of the Sea of Mists. The Isle of the Lady, I'm in Britain, and we just call it the land. We walk across a bridgeway during the time of the moon when the bridgeway of Earth is exposed from the mainland to the island. Other times it's covered by water. This woman is named, this regressed entity is a woman named Aranya. And on the island is a chapel, and only one person lives there. The lady lives there. And she tells Cannon, I'm not allowed to tell you where my home is because it's kept secret, so others don't use us for their power. Cannon often found that secret groups avoided strangers and did not trust them. And often when she brought somebody into a regressive session and they were a member of an occulted belief system, it took a long time to establish trust so that they would talk to her. She found it hard to convince this entity, Aranya, in session to go against her values and morals, that she had in that lifetime. Cannon assured Aranya, I don't know, I wrote this wrong. Oh well. That Cannon wouldn't tattle, wouldn't tell anybody what she was told, and her intention was not to hurt her or to misuse this knowledge. So in trance, she says she lives in the hills with the old ones. It's not a city, it's just a fort. It's close by. In fact, she didn't know what city meant. She didn't know what the word city meant. She says, we don't live in the fort, we live close to it. We don't go to the fort. They just live in the hills. And the ones across the water live in the fort. We shelter in the caves or in huts, and we move all the time. They're semi-permanent. We don't have a permanent place because they'd find us and kill us. The others think that what her group does is wrong. The others are darker. They say that it's wrong to worship spirits and fae, F-E-Y, which are the fairies, the little people. Others call them demons. They do not wish to understand. They wish to corrupt and destroy this group with hidden knowledge. Cannon asks, is this your religion? And she says, that word has no meaning to me. It's interesting. Cannon tells her, well, religion means like a belief or a worship system. And she says, well, yes, others call us Druids. We call ourselves the Ladies of the Goddess. She has a sacred name that's not spoken. To speak it is to have power, and that's not granted to mortals. The others are from Gaul. We're not violent. We don't do things like they do, like sacrifice their captives to their gods. We don't do that. We cross the land bridge when it's uncovered at a certain time in the moon, and we do a ceremony, and then at the same night we return before the water comes back over the bridge. The isle is a place of power for the lady, and we are her children. And I don't think she means literally, she means like followers. She's greater and more real than us, and we go there at least one time a month to honor her. We keep watch for her. We listen for things she needs to know. We help those in need, like they do charitable work. And the lady herself is a healer. She is more than is. She's a child of creation. She enters the priestess and directs her. So what she's being told here, Cannon is being told, is there's a woman lives on this island. It's isolated most of the time because it's fully surrounded by water. Part of the time there's a land bridge. She lives there and practices religious Druidic stuff. But the lady, the goddess, enters the priestess. So there's a physical human being woman there, but there's an entity that she communicates with. She's shown, let me go back here and tell you this again. So the goddess enters the priestess and directs her, and she has no need for food or drink or shelter. She shows us how to heal, and we are called to heal, and we must go. We prepare fire, draw it into ourselves, and channel energy into the ill. So this sustains them until the herbs and concoctions that we give them work. So they're doing two kinds of healing, herbal and energetic. We gaze at the fire, we draw energy into ourselves, we become part of the lady and her power, and her energy is challenged through us. The fire is a focal point. I think it would be like gazing in a fountain or gazing in a scrying bowl or a crystal. She said, it's been a while since I read this. This is funny. She also uses purple crystal stone from the hill. And we can gaze on the stone, and it has part of the fire, I think, energetically. And sometimes we also use a pink stone. Each person has her own personal stone. Each person finds their own thing on which to focus and draw energy. A real fire is started, and it has power in it with energy. We string the stones around our necks, and they hang over the essence of light within us, and they take our light and amplify it. We choose the stones by holding them and feeling whether they repel our fire or they draw our love. The stone stays with you. The more it's with you, the more you and the stone are in tune with each other. Some people with enough power can use their stones for all types of healing. Some are healed to boost their power with certain stones. Some are helped to boost their power with certain stones specific to a specific illness. You can increase your healing power by practicing every day to focus your light center. And she described the exercises they do, and it's starting to sound like dervishes and Sufis, and a lot of different religious practices use bodily movement to facilitate whatever they're trying to achieve energetically, connection with another plane. And I'm thinking of davening that the Jewish Orthodox men do when they pray, they rock. I think some Muslims do that too. So she describes spinning counterclockwise, or as she uses a word, she doesn't use the word counterclockwise. Cannon had to get her to explain the word she does use. The word she does use is winter shins. And it helps to unlock blocks, she said. Where am I? She says you draw your mind into yourself by doing this spinning, and you focus on this point and you join yourself with the energy in the point of focus. You have to be in a calm state. You have to surround yourself with goodwill and protection. This is all sounding an awful lot like meditation to me. The triangle point, the pyramid, in a pentagram shape, they intensify the energy, and because they're made of energy. We're talking sacred geometry now. She says, be careful not to generate too much energy. They have to watch not to generate too much. Crystals are good because they're pure, and stone is good. Wood is not as good for holding energy. She says it's better to spin outside, close to the earth. And this reminds me, when I was little, we used to do this all the time. I grew up in California. We'd go outside on the grass and we would spin. We would just spin until we were just as dizzy as could be. And immediately lie on the ground, on the grass, and just watch the clouds. I don't know what kind of weird ceremony we were indulging in that we weren't even realizing it. I have no doubt at all that this was something significant, because at least when I was a kid, most kids did this. She says they do it every day. And it's dangerous to be them because the others don't want them to survive. They feel like they're hunted. They are always hunted. The others wish to take control, to rule the people. The people look on the Druids, on the Druid women for help and guidance and protection. These others spread negative rumors about them, so people will fear what they do. The others don't access the women's power. They cannot access their power anyway because it's closed. They've been closed since birth, and the women are protected since birth. These others don't desire to learn. The spirits, interesting. Spirits know that these others are bad, and they just don't come. They won't deal. You can protect yourself with light. She says it's powerful to visualize white protective light around you. I think we know that now. Karen says she sees the light as a rainbow around her. And they used to shape stones, crystals, with their essence long ago, and now they shape it with harder stones. So she's talking about an ability that people had to focus on crystals and create a change of shape in them. And we've heard that in association with building the pyramids too. She said a shape that has a point to it magnifies the energy. Visualizing light is more powerful than stone for protection. Stone protect, crystals protect, but visualizing light is better. Only women serve the lady, not men. Women wear white wool robes with long sleeves and a cord at the waist. The male druids are terrible, she said. They're not good. They do bad things. They don't use their power with good intention. And they're preying on the women as well. She said that they belong to a subset of people who move towards darkness. The older women come to the village and select 6-year-old girls to go and serve the lady. It's a huge honor. The priestess is told where to find girls that are suitable. So she gets in communication with the spirit world, and they tell her, go to Tucson, go to London, go to this nearby village or that nearby village and tell her which child will have the ability. And they find girls that are suitable, and they've known from birth who these girls will be. During later training, they may spend months on the island, these girls, as they're being trained. What we're taught is shadowed from other eyes to protect it. She says they don't eat meat, they don't kill because that's wrong. It's okay to plant crops as long as you put back as much as you take. She describes a ceremony on the island. They form a circle around an altar in the glade. This altar is black with a clear stone in the center, which amplifies and provides a place of focus. They hold candles and circle while they chant, and they focus energy to the lady. Power is brought back to us and intensified by the presence of the group doing it together. The lady may enter the priestess and speak, or may appear separate from the priestess as her own entity. Karen in trance tells Cannon that she cannot make the chant sound. For Cannon, it's not allowed. The time of the new moon, when the moon is big in the sky, is when it's done. Others cannot find it because the island is protected, and others cannot see it. You have to have the right energy to be able to see it. Brigadoon, right? Cannon asks about Stonehenge, and Karen thinks that she's talking about something called Giant's Dance, a place of study and to focus power and to learn about the universe, the sky. Stones. The large stones in Stonehenge were raised with music long ago because sound was used to lift weight. It was built to mark time to the end, the time when the mystery has been remembered. That's the end, is when, finally the veil is lifted. And it will be remembered on the last day. She says her people came from across the water when they angered the gods and the place was destroyed. This sounds eerily familiar. And they misused their abilities. The gods were angry and scattered them to the winds, and their country sank into the sea. And Cannon says this sounds a lot like Atlantis, and these may have been survivors with ancient knowledge. Excuse me. She said those who we call Druids, they didn't build Stonehenge. It's much older. It marks time, and at midsummer, the altar stone was lit with the fire of the sun, and those who built it still had the power to lift stones with sound. So in this trance, she says now she's about 25, which is middle-aged, and these women can get permission to marry, but they they rarely want to. Women are not chosen to lead in life, and they're not given a life of learning. They're just allowed to have children, and these women want no part of that. These women serve to keep the memory of love alive. They travel around and do healings. They make healing herbal stuff, I wrote. There's descriptions. And the people in turn value them and protect them. The older ones are in the cave sometimes. people will go into the hills and talk with these older ones in the caves, and they've always been there. According to her, the older ones have always been there, and they follow the old gods and they keep the memories alive. There are men and women, and they are descended from the gods before humans, Cannon is told. These people in the hills. And they mated with humans when they showed up, who knows from where, but today the old ones are their descendants. So, sounding like they agree with Paul Wallace. They are a dying race. There are fewer born every year. Many died of hunger because they were pushed into the wilderness by the others. Each family of old ones is named for a god that the family serves, and the people help by leaving food at the crossroads, but they're being forgotten and starved. So this is where Dolores died in her research. She never got to research beyond this point in this story. And so we're not going to know, like, the crossroads thing and the old ones dying. She never got to pursue that part of it. Anyway, back to the story. She says her people help the old ones and they sometimes live with them. And Cannon asks about, do they live a long life? And she says yes. And so Cannon asks about ley lines on the earth, and she's told yes, that's true. There's one near the Giant's Dance, Stonehenge, and it's an interconnection between earth and power leaks from the center here. It's an extreme power point, and you can access energy at these places and get an understanding and power, but just not any old random guy can, pull up in his pickup on his way home from McDonald's and just go get a little bit of energy. You have to be on a path of learning and evolving and studying. And this energy can only be detected by beings who are sensitive. She says her people witch, W-I-T-C-H, this is how she used the word, to find these ley lines. So she explains that's like dowsing for water. They use a willow or a fruit branch, fresh cut or alive, and that's the best kind. They can find the ley lines, and then they can find water. They can also find certain kind of stones and metals doing this. When Karen wakes up from this particular trance, she remembers nothing, but she feels a huge burst of energy. So she came back a couple of weeks later, did another session, and here we go again with the same druidess. And this time it was really easy to access that conscious state for her. Karen tells Cannon, we're preparing for a ceremony on the island. It's an initiation of new disciples. They'll be appraised, and some will be kept and some will be sent home. The lady decides through the high priestess. She describes white robes, the center of the circle. They focus energy, and it either repels or accepts these girls. If the energy is too powerful for a body, they can't be accepted. So it's not like they fail. It's just that the energy is too much for them. If the energy is okay, they're told to build it up and send it back out. And if they're capable of receiving the energy and building it bigger and sending it out again, then they're ready to do this work. If the high priestess feels this energy sent back from them, then she will accept them. She places her hands on her solar plexus like a pyramid pointing out. It's a weird symbolic thing she does in trance. She described the method of taking in and sending out the energy, and it's done in healing sessions as well. So these girls have to be able to do this in order to heal people. She sees a temple of light for learning and healing, and there are different vibrations and colors that are used. She says all healing comes from within. Dolores is told that Karen has been a healer in the past. She has the ability. She needs to learn to open up and focus and draw on the energy. Once you have this gift, you always have it. So if you had it in a past life, you still have it. She reads Dolores by holding Dolores's hand and tells her once her knowledge was destroyed and her knowledge that she was protecting was destroyed, and that's why she seeks lost knowledge now. Karen is upset. She saw fire while holding Dolores's hand. And she says that Dolores is still searching for knowledge that was lost. And she was warned, make sure people don't use your information in the wrong way. And she was told that she can protect her work with energy. Cannon's been told often that she worked in the library at Alexandria, that her job was to protect the books, and she was there when it was burned, and she had been the caretaker of the scrolls. She died trying to save them, which is very interesting. I'm looking here to see. Okay, we'll finish this chapter. Karen in a trance says, we watch the stars and their movement tells us what will be and what compels people. So we're talking astrology here. In her next session, this was the most unsettling experience that Cannon had. They went back to the Druidics gathering herbs, and they talked about plants, and she simply didn't recognize the plants that Cannon was familiar with, because Cannon's in Arkansas. And interestingly enough, in trance, Karen, as this druidess, had no idea what Cannon was talking about. In real life, today, as Karen, she totally was into it and knew all about it. And the druidess tells her that she's storing up plants for the wintertime. They eat most of them raw. So Cannon takes her forward in time to the day of a ceremony that she's about to be made a priestess. There are only 2 girls being chosen, trying. They stay a month on the island to gather herbs and complete their ceremonies. Now, these are her words. Okay, try to put this without upsetting the algorithms. Cannon is told by her in trance that as a druidess, they were taught not to allow themselves to be captured alive, to protect their knowledge. They cannot take chances that they could be tortured and reveal knowledge. If she did get caught, her fellow followers were required to make sure she couldn't talk, if you get my drift, because otherwise she would have lost faith with him anyway, so she couldn't be a part of it anymore. And she tells Cannon she can't discuss everything with her. She says the others are tall, they have weapons, they're men of war. They live about a day away from these women. She says she starts to cough, and she tells Cannon that when you heal someone, you take on part of their illness and you must release it from yourself. It has to do with empathy. And eventually, this won't be so bad for me, but I'm still a student and I'm learning. On another day, she was lured to come to a healing, and she was locked in a room. It was a trap. It was a hut she'd been to before, but the family had been murdered, and strangers had taken over the hut and lured her in, and it was a trap. She said, I must die, and then she did something with her hands that began very weird breathing, and Dolores didn't know what to make of it. She was scared that Karen would die, so she took Karen out of trance that day. And it was the only time in 30 years, Cannon said, that she was actually scared by what happened in one of these sessions. She said, the subject said, my people struggle for knowledge, and they strive for knowledge for good, and they swear an oath to protect it with their lives. And so when she was captured, that's what she did. So that's the end of that chapter, and we'll make this the end of this video. It's kind of perfect timing, and I'll be back with the next video, and I hope you're enjoying it. So thank you, and slung of oil, and I'll be back.